Today we'll be tying up a few loose ends related to the Ford 8.8 that we swapped into the rear end of this Jeep Wrangler TJ. If you haven't seen that video, I'll link it down below, but basically we took a Ford 8.8 that already had an ARB locker in it. I re-geared it, welded on a truss, and then installed it in this TJ. But in that episode, I didn't end up installing a drive shaft or any parking brake hardware. So today we're going to get a drive shaft in here, and we'll get the parking brake hardware set up. Now, when I swapped this Ford 8.8 into the rear end of the Project Jeep a few episodes ago, the drive shaft that I had on here became too long. It no longer fit with the Ford 8.8. So typically when you encounter a situation like that, all you're going to do is go ahead and find a local driveline shop. They will shorten up your drive shaft for short money and you'll be good to go. Now, unfortunately, where I live, there's a pretty big lack of car culture and a major lack of four-wheel drive culture. And the only place that I could find within an hour or so of where I live that was willing to shorten a drive shaft wanted to charge more than what a brand new drive shaft would cost from any of the online vendors out on the West Coast. So in comes our new drive shaft. In the past, I've usually ordered drive shafts from Tom Woods, and I've been very happy with them. This time I went with an Adams drive shaft. The reason being that I got this thing for about $100 less than I would have got Tom Woods for. I'm sure you guys are familiar with another YouTube channel, Bleepin' Jeep, and he actually has a 20% off code for Adams drive shaft on his website. So I used that code and I got this thing for, I don't know, 200 and something dollars. You can stick around to the end to find out the actual price because I don't remember offhand right now. The Ford 8.8 axle that I got did not come with any parking brake hardware, so I ordered this assembly from East Coast Gear Supply. It comes with the backing plate, the mounting bracket, and all the hardware. So we should just need to slide this on, hook up a cable, and we'll be good to go. Now, as far as the cables, the stock ones from the Jeep TJ won't work unless you originally had disc brakes, which I didn't. I had drum brakes, so we needed to get new cables. And as far as I can tell online, you can either use a cable off of a TJ that had disc brakes in the rear, or you can get one off of a Grand Cherokee, and that's what I did. This is a cable off of a 98 Grand Cherokee. I got one for the driver's side and the passenger side. Just bought the cheapest ones that they had on Rock Auto, and we'll see how they work. So here's how the axle's set up right now. We've got the bracket for the caliper, and then we've got nothing beyond it until we get to the end of the axle shaft. So the purpose of what we're doing today is to install this backing plate, the stamped sheet metal, and then the hardware in here, which currently does not exist in this location. The assembly I bought came with a new bracket, and I'm just going to keep that on there for ease of installation rather than taking all the stuff off and trying to get it onto this bracket. You may be wondering why I bought this as an assembly, and it's because I could not find this stamped sheet metal backing plate anywhere other than with this whole assembly. I was able to find the hardware and the shoes elsewhere, but I could not find the backing plate, so that's why we ended up with the whole assembly here. Alright, we've got the brake hardware mounted up on both sides. The only evidence you can see right now is the backing plate right here. And now it's time to get these cables installed. And exactly what cables are we using? Well, East Coast Gear Supply sells a couple cables, and that would have been the easy way to go, was to buy cables from them because they sell them being advertised as fitting a TJ with an 8.8 swap. But I dug into it a little further and did some reading on jeepforum.com. From what I read over there, brake cables, parking brake cables off of a 98 Grand Cherokee should fit this application. So that's what I've got right here. I just ordered the two cheapest ones, you know, right and left side. So let's get them on and hopefully they will work fine. Here's our final install. You can see we've got the cable on the other side. Again, that one's touching the frame, then it roots up over the muffler and into the bracket in the middle here. We already saw the other side. And I've got this fully tightened up, and the parking brake is currently activated with the handle inside. I will note that the adjustment nut on this junction up here is almost at the end of its travel. So I'm not sure if that is an issue with this specific application of brake cable that I used, or if it's just because I went with really cheap ones. It is serviceable and there is more room for the nut to go, but there's not a whole lot left on there. So something else I'm noticing here is this cable on the passenger side with the parking brake fully engaged inside. The tensioning spring is fully compressed, so I don't think this could go anymore if it needed to. It seems like it's holding pretty tight as is. I can't turn it by hand. We'll see how it is once we get the tire back on, but it seems alright. Worst case, I'll have to cut a few coils off of that spring and then it should work just fine. Well, unfortunately, we're not getting full activation out of the parking brake, and I'm pretty sure it's because of these springs right here. They're compressing all the way and they're keeping the little activator level for the parking brake from going any further. I've got everything adjusted properly. I've got the shoes adjusted properly inside the drum. I've got the cables adjusted properly at the junction up there, but it's still not working right. So I'm gonna chop off part of this spring and we'll see if that helps the issue. And that's what we were looking for. The spring compressed, but it still has room to go. So let's throw the tires back on and see if this fixed the issue. I'm going to conclude the parking brake saga right here. The parking brake is functional. It will hold the Jeep on a hill, but it's not quite as good as the one that was in here from the factory. Whether that's because of the shoes that are inside the drum, maybe they need to be worn in, or maybe just the leverage is a little bit different between the Jeep and the Ford axle. I'm not really sure, but it's definitely passable, and this pretty much wraps up our rear axle install. The only thing that's left to do that I could do is I could put the rear sway bar back on, but I'm actually going to hold off on that for now, and I may just toss it on at a later date. And other than that, we just need to break in the gears since we put new gears in it and change the fluid after a few miles, and we'll be good to go. Well, this episode has been a long time coming. I think it was over a year between when I installed the rear axle and when I installed the drive shaft in this episode. So this Jeep is obviously not a daily driver kind of vehicle for me. I'm very fortunate in that this Jeep is just kind of a hobby project vehicle, and I have other cars I can drive during the week. But like I said, to really complete this install, I could reinstall the rear sway bar, but I'm not entirely sure what I want to do about a rear sway bar yet. We may keep running the stock one, or I may do something else. So until I make that decision, I'm just going to run no sway bar in the back. And additionally, the ARB air locker that's in the axle does not have an air line hooked up to it right now, so we're really just running an open diff in the back. I won't be getting an air line to it until I install the air system in the Jeep, so watch out for that in a future episode. Now on the screen you'll see the amount of money that we spent today. Like I said earlier, the drive shaft was $200 and something, as you see. Then we had that flange yoke that we put on the drive shaft that you saw us put on there. That was just to bolt it up to the flange. That was on the 8.8 axle. Beyond that, we had the e-brake hardware from East Coast Gear Supply. That was $90 per side, and then the cables came to $34.72 total with shipping and tax from, where did I get it from? Rock Auto. And that pushes our episode total to a little over $500 and our build total to a little over $7,500. Now it seems like we're getting close to this thing being quote-unquote done, but trust me when I say we have plenty more to do on this Jeep, so there will be plenty more episodes to come. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.